What's going on? This is your man John Fortune, your host of the Frustrated Fan Sports Show. And today's show is going to be about Bryce Harper. And this is my first show where I'm talking baseball, but I had to get on this because at this point right now, during the taping of this show, Bryce Harper still hasn't signed. And the crazy thing about it is that it seems like all reports are saying that he's going to sign with the Philadelphia Phillies, which is in our division. But at the same time, there's something that I have to really get off my chest when it comes to Bryce Harper. First off, I want to tell everybody this. Why do we care? Because at the end of the day, Bryce was never really that good of a player for us. I mean, when you really analyze what Bryce brought to the table when it came to playing for the Nationals, first off, he never wanted to be here. And he showed that. And he told us that over and over and over again. He didn't even have, you know how some players, they sit up there and they say, you know, the politically correct thing, where it's like, what teams do you like? Oh, I currently like the team that I'm on. But when I was young, I used to like this. Or there is no, they'll sit up there and say, there's no other team in my mind right now than the team I'm currently on. He's never done that. He's never proved his loyalty to this city. He's never proved his loyalty to this team. And he's never cared about being here. The whole time that he's been here, he's only been looking for his way out. And for us to sit up here and act like we're going to moan, grope, and cry about this guy leaving, and even the fact that he's going to the Phillies, I'm saying, why even care? This guy has done nothing for us. Nothing for us. I mean, yeah, he had 34 home runs last year. His MVP year, he had 40-something home runs. But guess what? He strikes out just as much. He has more at-bats than most people, and yet still he strikes out just as much. So I'm just like over this whole Bryce thing. I told people 2 whole years ago, we should have traded Bryce then. I don't see the point of keeping a guy around that at the end of the day, one, doesn't want to be here. Two, his production don't match his the praise that he gets. And three, for the money that he wants. I mean, let's be honest. Bryce, there's no way in hell you think that Bryce is worth $300 million. There's no way you can actually think that. Now, the guy across from him, Manny Machado, yes, this guy's way better defensively, way better at hitting the bat. I mean, way better at hitting the ball, and strikes out far less. But yet and still, we want Bryce? Are you kidding me? And for all of you guys who want to sit up here and want to say, well, what about this? He had 34 home runs. He had 103 runs or something like that. Yeah, 103 runs and 100 RBI. I'm going to tell y'all, I'm going to start throwing out numbers for you. Those of y'all so y'all can understand why we don't need Bryce here. So I'm going to start with this. First off, I'm going to give y'all his postseason numbers. In the postseason, he's had 76 at-bats. Of those 76 at-bats, he's only had 15 hits. He's had 5 home runs, 10 RBIs, and the kicker, he's had 23 strikeouts. 23 strikeouts in the postseason. He's never done anything in the postseason that's been so memorable for us to make us say, we got to keep this guy. Remember what he did in the playoffs. He's never done that for us the whole time he's been here. And he's been in the playoffs 4 years. 4 years he's been in the playoffs with us, and he's done nothing significant that made us think about him. The one person we think about is a guy he's not even here anymore, and that's Jason Worth. Jason Worth has done more in the playoffs than what Bryce Harper has done for us in the playoffs. And then when you think about the 23 strikeouts, that cancel out the 15 hits and the 5 RBIs. And still, you're talking about there's 3 strikeouts to go. So he had 10 RBIs. You're talking about that reduces those RBIs down to 7. So in actuality, in the postseason, he's only shown us 7 RBIs in the postseason. That's what Bryce has given us since he's been here. Then on top of that, we talk about, okay, now let's talk about people that's on the team with him that basically has similar numbers. So let's talk about, okay, Bryce's numbers. He's had 550 at-bats, 103 runs, 137 hits, 34 home runs, 100 RBI, 13 stolen bases, and 169 strikeouts. Now, let's talk about Trey Turner. Trey Turner had more at-bats. Trey Turner was at-bat 664 times, which means he probably played almost practically the whole season. Then he has the same runs as Bryce, 103 runs. He has more hits, 180 hits. Then on top of that, he has 19 home runs. Yes, that's less than Bryce, but at the same time, you're talking about a guy who's still getting the home runs that you need him to get. I mean, if Trey Turner is going to average about 19, 20 home runs a season, that's actually pretty good. He had 73 RBIs. Yes, that's lower than Bryce, but you're talking about at the same time, he's still getting more at-bats and more hits. And he had 132 strikeouts. This guy's younger than Bryce, and he has less strikeouts than Bryce. The next guy I got on here is Anthony Rendon. Anthony Rendon had 529 at-bats. So he's still 30 at-bats off than Bryce. He had 88 runs. 88 runs, yeah, that's low, but at the same time, what do you expect from a guy who basically is always super consistent? He had 163 hits. Understand that. That means he had almost 30 more hits than Bryce. Then he had 24 home runs. He's only 10 home runs off the pace of that. And you talk 10 home runs off the pace and still almost 30 at-bats less than Bryce. Then he had 92 RBI. Again, you're talking about that's only about eight RBIs off. And still, again, you're talking about 30 at-bats off. And he only had 82 strikeouts, which means that Anthony Rendon is way better than Bryce. This is the guy that we need to be paying $300 million to, or somewhere in that factor, because again, he's our best player. Now, I'm going to talk about a young guy who basically came in and replaced Bryce, who came in and actually played, Juan Soto. Juan Soto had 414 at-bats. That means he basically had 136 less at-bats than Bryce. He had 77 runs, which means that he's only maybe 30-something runs off of Bryce's pace. 121 hits. 121 hits. Bryce had 137. So again, you're talking about a guy that still, if he had those 130-something at-bats, he might be beating Bryce's numbers. Then you're talking about this guy had 22 home runs. That means he's 12 off of Bryce at 100-something bats less, 100-something at-bats less. Then he had 70 RBI. Again, 30 RBI off. Still, we're talking about 100-something at-bats less than Bryce. And guess what? He only had 99 strikeouts. 99 strikeouts compared to Bryce, 169 strikeouts. Bryce has more strikeouts than all 3 guys that I've just talked about. All 3 of them. So then I sat up there and I said, let me dig a little deeper. Let me do the comparison. Everybody compares Bryce Harper to Mike Trout. And then I actually looked into his numbers. And to be quite honest, I feel the comparison is very disrespectful to Mike Trout. Mike Trout, here's his numbers. He had 471 at-bats, which means he's still about 80 off at-bats than what Bryce had. He had 101 runs, 2 runs short than Bryce. He had 147 hits, 10 more than Bryce. He had 79 RBIs. Again, shorter than Bryce, but not that much off. But he had 39 home runs. 39 home runs. So he beat Bryce by 5 home runs. Then on top of that, he had 24 stolen bases. 24 stolen bases. Bryce only had 13. So what does that tell you? That tells you that Mike Trout is far superior to Bryce when it comes to what his value to his team and his value to what he is to baseball. Mike Trout is way better. The sad part is that Mike Trout plays on a West Coast team. If Mike Trout played on an East Coast team, like the Yankees or maybe the Phillies, or even if Mike Trout played here, we're talking about the greatest baseball player to walk to in this generation right now. And then on top of that, so I was sitting there, I was like, you know what, let me delve a little bit deeper. Let me delve a little bit deeper to see why, again, is everybody so sad about Bryce. So I sat up there and did another comparison, Mike Trout versus Bryce. I looked up their WAR. Now, the WAR is the games contributed by the player versus his replacement. So, when it comes down to it, when you think about Juan Soto replacing Bryce Harper, right? Bryce Harper only counts one game. So guess what, y'all? That means that Bryce Harper means one game, makes a 1 game difference to Juan Soto, who was a rookie last year. 1 game difference. Now, in comparison to that, Mike Trout has a 10 game difference. So guess what? For every 10 games that Mike Trout is not in, they lose those 10 games. For every game, 1 game that Bryce Harper is not in, Juan Soto basically makes up for pretty much all that, except for 1 game. So what does that tell you? That tells you that all this anger and sadness and frustration about losing Bryce is all fictional. I mean, to me, Bryce is as overrated as Aaron Rodgers when it comes to how much people talk about him and how they inflate this guy's stats and how they inflate this guy's thing as though he's this good, awesome player. He's awful defensively. I mean, name a time that you can remember where Bryce made a defensive play that made you say, oh my God, he's amazing. Name a time when you think about that. Bryce hasn't done that. Then on top of that, let's talk about his pitching. Let's talk about his batting against pitchers in our own league. So I'm going to start here, because I just wanted to really put some numbers out there, because I think that a lot of people are sitting here thinking that Bryce is more valuable than what he really is to us. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to start with the team that he's possibly signing with, the Philadelphia Phillies. Their starting five pitchers is Nola, Arrieta, Pivetta, Velasquez, and Elfin. Now, Nola, he's pretty good against him for some reason, but not as good as you want him to be. He had 31 at-bats against Nola, 10 hits, 3 home runs, and 7 RBIs. Against Jake Arrieta, he had 21 at-bats, 4 hits, 0 home runs, and 1 RBI. Against Pivetta, he had 9 at-bats, 3 hits, 2 home runs, and 3 RBIs. Against Velasquez, he had 11 at-bats, 6 hits, 1 home run, and 5 RBIs. Against Elfin, he had 9 at-bats, 5 hits, 0 home runs, and 1 RBI. That's against the team he's possibly going to. He didn't even hit that well against them. I mean, when you average all that out, you're talking about for that pitching alone, he's had 81 at-bats, 28 hits, 6 home runs, and 17 RBI against a team he's possibly going to. Now, I sat up there and said, well, let me see about some of these other teams. So here's Atlanta against their starting 5 pitching. Foltley, I don't know how to say his name, Foltler, something like that. He had 23 at-bats against this guy, 6 hits, 2 home runs, and 2 RBIs. Now, this other guy, he just owns basically. Well, I ain't going to say he owns, but he kind of has a good streak against him. Teran, he has 40 at-bats, 18 hits, 8 home runs, and 19 RBI. Sean Newcomb, he has 9 at-bats, 3 hits, 2 home runs, and 5 RBIs. Now, against Anibal Sanchez, the guy who's now with us, he had 14 at-bats, 4 hits, 1 home run, and 2 RBIs. Now, understand this, guys. This is a guy that's coming to Washington, and he did not hit that well against this guy. So, now the last one is, I think his name is Brian McCarthy. He had 9 at-bats, 2 hits, 0 home runs, and 1 RBI. So that makes it 95, 29, 13, and 28, which means that in reality, he should be going to Atlanta instead of the Mets. Instead of the Phillies, because he's actually done better against Atlanta than he did against the Phillies. So now I'm going to the Mets. Now, the Mets, of course, we know that first 4 starters are just dominant. But I still had to sit up there and put the stats out there for people who think that this is a joke. So Jake DeGrom, he was 31, 10, and 2. So he's 31 at-bats, 10 hits, 2 home runs, and 2 RBIs. Against Zach Wheeler, he was 26. He had 26 at-bats, 5 hits, 1 home run, 4 RBIs. Against Syndergaard, he had 24 at-bats, 7 hits, 0 home runs, and 3 RBIs. And then against, I think his name is Steve Marks. Yeah, Steve Marks. He had 17 at-bats, 4 hits, 0 home runs, and 2 RBIs. That means against the Mets alone, he has 98 at-bats, 26 hits, 3 home runs, and 11 RBIs. And this is against a powerful Mets team. This is our own division, y'all. This is our own division. So then I said, let me go a little bit deeper. Let me see about the worst team in our division. Now, I only found 3 players, three pitchers that I could find their stats for against Bryce. Now, Urena, he had 11 at-bats against Urena, 3 hits, 0 home runs, and 1 RBI. Then he went against, I think his name is Wei Ming Chen. He had 29 at-bats, 8 hits, 0 home runs, and 4 RBIs. And then against Dan Straley, he had 19 at-bats, 4 hits, 0 home runs, and 3 RBI. That's against 3 pitchers on the Marlins. So what does that tell you, people? What does that say? That tells you and that says that Bryce is not worth the pain that you set up here and always thought he was worth. Bryce is not that much of it's not that big of a building block for us when it comes to years gone by. You talking about signing this guy to 10 years and $300 million? Are you crazy? We would be wasting our time because, again, if we're going to get this same output against, I talked about all of what he had against what he's basically hitting against in our own division, and his numbers in our own division. He's awful against the pitching in our own division, and yet and still we're talking about missing Bryce. It's a waste. It's a waste. And now we're talking about him possibly. Think about who he has to go against on our staff. Think about what he's going to face on our staff and what type of point is going to be proven by our staff when they face Bryce Harper. You think Max Scherzer isn't going to sit up there and try to sit up there and strike Bryce out every time he shows up at the plate? You don't think Anibal Sanchez, who had good numbers against him already, isn't going to sit up there and try to show out when he plays against Bryce? Or how about Steven Strasburg? You don't think Steven Strasburg is going to have a point to prove? Come on, y'all. Our pitching knows Bryce. So guess what? They know where to pitch to Bryce. They understand how to pitch to Bryce. They understand what Bryce's sweet spots are and where they're not. They know how to strike him out. Our pitching staff is going to be awesome against Bryce Harper. And y'all are sitting here really thinking that he's going to be some type of awesome player against us. You have to be kidding me. Again, all these pitchers have seen Bryce. And then on top of that, understand this. The situation that happened with him and Jonathan Papelbon. Now, for people that's been on teams before, we've all had a situation where we've had that difficult player. And when a player confronts another player, that's because a lot of other players feel the same way about that guy, including some of the coaches. So guess what? When a player is confronted by another player, understand that that player was egged on by everybody else. So don't sit up here and think that Jonathan Papelbon just went after Bryce for nothing. And understand, this wasn't the first pitcher. This was the second pitcher that went after him. And then on top of that, Dusty Baker used to say the exact same thing about Bryce and how he doesn't run plays out or he doesn't give maximum effort. Do you really? Now, I mean, there's no reason in hell to think that Bryce is worth anything that we want to give him. Then let's talk about the fact of how he acted when other teams would come here. How many of y'all remember when he cut off his beard when they played the Yankees? He had a full beard prior to playing the Yankees. If most people don't know this, for y'all that don't know this, the Yankees have a rule in which they do not allow facial hair on their players. So it just so happens that Bryce, when they face the Yankees, Bryce happens to cut off his beard so they can see what he looks like without the facial hair. Why didn't he do it prior to that? No, he happened to do it at the Yankees game. Then think about how disrespectful he was. I don't give a damn where you from. Yet and still, he shows up at the Caps championship playoff game. Championship game. He shows off at the championship game wearing a Las Vegas Golden Knights jersey. And then Ryan Zimmerman and Max Scherzer had to make it up by being in the stand with the fans with the Caps jersey. So think about that. This guy never wanted to be here. He never cared about being here. And for me, I'm going to say this. Good damn riddance. This is your man, John Fortune. And like, subscribe, comment. Tell me what y'all think. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong about Bryce. But other than that, this is your man, John Fortune. And this is the Frustrated Fan Sports Show.